UGC lecture series on computer science in software engineering. We are seeing a series of lectures, and in today's session we will be seeing about an introduction to feasibility study, and we will also see a case study on the project management techniques. Let us first see what is a feasibility study. A feasibility study is used to determine the viability of an idea, such as ensuring a project which is legally and technically feasible as well as economically justifiable. It also tells us whether a project is worth the investment. In some cases, a project may be doable, but in some cases, a project may not be doable. For example, let us consider we have an hospital. A hospital which aims to expand, that is, add an extension to the building, may perform a feasibility study. The study will determine whether the project should go ahead or not. The people carrying out the study will take into account labor and the material costs. Then, a feasibility study as well examines the predictability of a proposal, business venture or idea, and to narrow down the possibilities. The feasibility study is basically the test of the proposed system in the light of its workability, meeting users' requirements, effective use of resources, and of course, the cost effectiveness. Now, let us discuss the differences between a feasibility study and the business plan. A feasibility study helps to determine whether an idea or business is a viable option. A feasibility study is filled with calculations, analysis, and estimated projections, while a business plan is made up of mostly tactics and strategies to be implemented in order to grow the business. Here, my dear students, a feasibility study is one which will tell you whether you can work out in a particular business or not, whereas in the case of a business plan, it deals with the strategic planning. So that is the basic difference between a feasibility study and the business plan. Now let us see the types of feasibility studies. The feasibility study has been classified into various types such as technical feasibility study, legal feasibility study, operational feasibility, financial feasibility, managerial feasibility, political feasibility, and market feasibility. Now let us now discuss what is a technical feasibility is. A technical feasibility is one wherein the technicalities will be measured. You need to know whether you have such a kind of technical stuff involved. For example, the technology that has been used, or for example, the languages that you are going to use to code. Say for example, if a particular software requires a Python language to be used, whether you have a Python language been installed in your system, whether you have such a kind of system availability with you, or say for example, if you are going to develop a software for augmented reality or for virtual reality, using, if you are going to have a Python with an computer vision, then you need to know, you need to have both the techniques as well the technology. You need to have the language, you need to have the equipments for working out. So such a kind of thing you call it as a technical feasibility. Then second point is the legal feasibility. What is a legal feasibility? Whatever work that you do, whether it is legal, whether it is ethical, so checking the legality with respect to the nation wherever you work is called as the legal feasibility. Third one is the operational feasibility. Whether whatever you do, whether it is operational, whether will you be in a position to operate it, whether this will work out or not. So to tell all those things, we call it as an operational feasibility. Then fourth one is one of the important factor that is called as a financial feasibility. For doing a particular task, always the customer may not give you the full payment at a single instance before starting up a project. he will be making an advance payment. He may make up or he may not give you an advance payment even. So in such a situation, it is you or it is the organization has to fund for the entire project. So this financial feasibility takes a vital role in checking whether the organization that you work in will be in a position to fund for the particular project unless the customer pays in. So the fifth feasibility is the managerial feasibility. As far as the managerial feasibility is concerned, whether can you manage a particular situation, whether are you in a position to work out or to solve a particular scenario. So such a kind of solving or such a kind of managerial capabilities come under this managerial feasibility. Then we need to check the political feasibility. Few projects wherein there might be some sort of hindrances from the political side too. So whatever you work, it should not have any kind of hindrances from the political people. So that denotes the political feasibility. Then the market feasibility. What is market feasibility? Whether whatever you work, whether this product will go out in the market well, or what sort of other products that are available in the market, how competitive your product is, how competent your product is. So to check all those things, we check the market feasibility. Then next is about the contents of a feasibility report. My dear students, let us see what are the contents that are required or that should be made available in a feasibility report. The first and foremost content is any feasibility report should have an introduction. Then it should have the background information. Background information will carry out what are the similar projects that are available in the market and what sort of advantages that this particular product, whatever you are going to develop, will be having, and what sort of market value this particular product has, that is an already existing product has. So to check all those details are available in this background information. Then the third one is the feasibility report should have the requirements. So what sort of requirements and how do you go ahead. Then the fourth point will have the evaluation. So what is an evaluation? How do you work out? Then about the conclusion. So how do you conclude a feasibility report? Any report for that matter, if you are going to have an introduction, definitely there will be a conclusion. Then finally you are supposed to give a recommendation or the final opinion whether this particular project is feasible to do or not, whether it is doable or whether it is not doable. So giving the final comment or the opinion is said to be the recommendation or the final opinion. Next, let us see about a case study. As I said in the initial slide, we will be discussing about the case study as well for the project management techniques. So let us see a case study on automatic attendance monitoring. Let us consider a college that works between 8 am and 2:45 pm on weekdays for both students and staff members. Now there are two issues that the college daily faces. Issue 1 is most of the staff members as well the students enter the campus exactly at 8 am and they are supposed to punch the attendance in the biometric machine on or before 8 am every day. As many staff members enter the campus sharp by 8 am, it is most likely that they make a late punch of their attendance and thereby they may lose their salary for the entire day. So that is issue 1. And what is issue 2? Issue 2 deals with it becomes difficult to monitor the hourly attendance of the students. So the staff members spend huge amount of time in taking the attendance and thereby they get a lesser time in delivering their theory portions. So it is we who have to create a software, an automatic attendance monitoring software, in such a way that neither the staff member lose their salary by making a late punch and nor the students they miss out their attendance. So it should be viable, it should be feasible enough. So for that we are going to develop a case study, and we will be finding out what sort of project management techniques that is to be followed in this particular case study. Now, what are the initial steps to make the feasibility study? First is, you are supposed to get a questionnaire, you are supposed to develop a questionnaire and then circulate it among the students as well as the staff members, what sort of remedial measures that could be done in order to proceed further as far as new software development is concerned. Then you are supposed to have an interview session, and that interview session you are supposed to make interviews with the top management official as well with few of their staff members, so that when you get more and more inputs, it will be easy for you, you will be getting the requirements in a clearer way, and when the requirements are clear, when it becomes easily understandable, you can easily start working on your project. So the third one is, what sort of equipments are required. Equipments such as, say for example, as far as this particular case is concerned, they ask for an automatic attendance monitoring system, and they say that most of the staff members come by 8 a.m. in the morning sharp, wherein when they are going to punch the attendance by 8:1 a.m. they will be missing out their salary. They will be given a the particular software will give them a half a day leave, and they will be missing out the salary. So to avoid that, we can have a camera in the office or in front of the gate of the college campus during their entrance. When it captures all the photos, then automatically the attendance should be punched. So for doing this work, we are supposed to purchase a camera. For doing this work, you are supposed to have an RFID tag too. So these are all some of the equipments that we are supposed to list down in the feasibility study. Then we are supposed to check the funding options. What is a funding option? Who will fund? Whether the customer will fund initially or whether the organization is going to fund for till the customer supports the funding. So we should be ready, the organization should be ready in funding. So all these four things have to be taken care of in the feasibility study. Next is eliciting requirements. What do you mean by eliciting? Eliciting means gathering requirements, requirement gathering phase. So in the requirement gathering, what is a requirement analysis? First of all, so requirement analysis is the process of defining the expectations of the users for an application that is to be built or modified. A requirement analysis means to analyze, document, validate and manage software or system requirements. Then let us see the different types of requirements. The requirements has been classified into business requirements, market requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements and user interface requirements. So what is a business requirement? So as far as the business requirement is concerned, what sort of strategic planning denotes to this kind of business requirement? Whether it is feasible to do the business, what sort of profit that you get in working out after completing this particular software, how much amount of profit that my organization will get, what is the turnover expected, how much of funding I need to have before the customer gives me the amount. So those things come under the business requirement. Then next is the market requirement. Market requirement denotes what sort of market it is, and if I am going to develop this software, what sort of benefits as an organization will I be getting? Will I be in a position to get future orders if I am going to develop this particular software? So that denotes the market requirement. Then about the functional requirement. Functional requirements, whether your software performs the function that is required, is called as functional requirement. Non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirements relates to whether a particular software is doable, whether it is scalable, whether it is achievable, whether the software is reliable, so on and so forth is being discussed under this non-functional requirements. Then the user interface requirements, how the screen should look like. In the initial screen, what sort of requirements are to be noted down, or where the logo of the company has to be placed, where you are supposed to keep the username and the password for the admin and for the guest user. So how the vendor screen should look like, how the customer screen should look like. So all those things come under this user interface requirements. Next is, let us see the tips for successful requirement gathering. Establishing the project goals and objectives early. Document every requirement elicitation activity. Be transparent with requirement documentation. Talk to the right stakeholders and users. Do not make assumptions about requirements. Confirm whether a job is being done. That is the reason even over here we are given it as confirm, because when even few customers, after saying it is all correct, it works out fine, after few days of time there is a possibility that he may say that it is not correct, this is not working out fine. So that is the reason we ask people to confirm to check whether the requirements gathered is correct or wrong. Then practice active listening. You are supposed to hear patiently of how it has been or what the customer is going to say about. So that is called as practice active listening. Then prioritize the product features. You who have to prioritize what sort of features have to be developed first, which all features have to be developed next, what are the features have to be developed at a later stage. It is the role of the requirement analyst to prioritize the features, and based on the priority that the analyst gives, your project will be started. So these are some of the tips for successful requirement gathering. Then next comes the software design part. My dear students, as far as the life cycle model of a software development life cycle model is concerned, you are very well aware that you have an analysis phase, you have a design phase, you have an implementation or the coding phase, you have the testing phase. Now in our case, since the requirements are highly clear, since people ask you to develop a attendance monitoring, automatic attendance monitoring system, and that too since they have given the staff members time is between 8 am and 2:45 pm, and they have as well given the staff members have to punch their attendance on or before 8 am and they can punch out their attendance on or after 2:45 pm. So the requirements over here is clear. So we are going to purchase only one equipment called a camera, and we are going to work out. So the requirements is clear. So we can go ahead with the traditional model of working. Say for example, we can even go ahead with the waterfall model of working. In the waterfall model, we have different phases. As you are aware, as we have seen in the previous sessions, the phases are analysis phase, design phase, coding or the implementation phase, and the testing phase. Now we have seen the analysis phase. In the analysis, we saw about the requirement gathering. Now as far as the second phase is concerned, about the design phase is concerned, let us see about the software design. The purpose of the design phase is to transform the requirements into complete and detailed system design specifications. The software design is the process by which an agent creates a specification of a software artifact intended to accomplish goals using a set of primitive components and subject to constraints. The design process comprises a set of principles, concepts and practices which allow a software engineer to model the system or product that is to be built. Next is, let us see the different types of designing. The design is being broadly classified into two groups. One is called the low level design, other one is the high level design. So This design gives more specific guidance for how the parts of the system will work and how they will work together. It refines the definitions of the databases, the major classes, and the internal and external interfaces. So now, what is the exact role of the high level design and the low level design, my dear students? As far as the high level design is concerned, the high level design focuses on what is to be done, whereas the low level design focuses on how it is to be done. The next phase is about the implementation phase. As far as this particular phase is concerned, after the requirements and design activity is completed, the next phase of software development life cycle is the implementation or development of the software. It is a phase developers start coding according to the requirements and the design discussed in the previous phases. Now, after implementation, after you have coded it down and after you have created a feature, we go into a testing phase. What is a testing phase? Software testing is required to point out the defects and errors that were made during the development phases. So, let us see few types of testing. The testing has been classified into unit testing, integration testing, system testing, regression testing, beta testing and alpha testing, which is as well called as an acceptance testing. Acceptance testing is a testing which has been accepted by the customer end. So, I am not giving you an explanation for these kind of testing over here because you have seen all those things in the earlier sessions. Now, as far as our case study is concerned, automatic attendance monitoring is concerned, once you have completed your coding, you will be doing a unit testing. What is a unit testing? Testing it into smaller modules. You call it as a unit testing. And when you are going to integrate two or more number of modules and when you are going to test it, that is called as an integration testing. Then you test the system, you test with the system whether it works in your system, whether it works in your friend's system, whether it works in the college system, whether it works at your home. So you test it in many places. That is called as a system testing. Then what is a regression testing? You test it again and again. You keep on do regression testing on everyday activity. So in each day you do the testing activity several times. So such a kind of testing you call it as a regression testing. Then beta testing. When you are complete with your software, you give it to your friends and you ask them to test it. My dear students, when you are going to create a software of your own, you may think like the software that you have created has no errors and it always hides from your end the errors. So it is always a better practice to give it to your friends to retest it. So the friends, they will be in a position to easily identify the errors. So when you are going to give a software to your friend and when you ask him to test it with a limited functionality, you do not provide your friends with all the functionalities. Say for example, you are going to give your software with limited functionality and when you ask your friend to test it out, such a kind of testing you call it as beta testing. Then if that becomes successful, you go to the customer, you ask the customer to test it, and when he is going to test it in his own development environment or in his own organization, then it is called as alpha testing. So when a customer is going to test it, he will be testing it with all functionalities, with the full functionalities that your particular software has it, right? So that is called as an alpha testing. So after alpha testing gets completed, what it does is when the customer becomes satisfied, he gives an acceptance. He commits the work, he gives an acceptance. So that is called as an acceptance testing. Let us see few testing methods. Basically, we have two different testing methods. One is called as a black box testing, other one is called as a white box testing. Black box testing is as well called as the behavioral testing. As far as this particular black box testing is concerned, as far as our case study is concerned, with respect to this black box testing, we are asked to monitor the attendance, automatic attendance monitoring. So what happens here is, based on the camera that people are going to place, and if a photograph has been taken for 50 or 100 employees at a single stretch, then the behavior of the camera, the behavior of the system will be checked. That is called as a black box testing. Then next is white box testing. White box testing is also called as glass box testing. In the glass box testing, the behavior will be checked, but apart from behavior, the structure of the coding will be checked. In white box testing, the tester will be given access to the codes and he will be asked to test the system, and if there is a fault, he will be given the code and he knows where the fault has occurred, and he will be given the access to change the code and retest too. Whereas in the case of black box testing, the tester will not be given the coding features, he will be given only the working functionality of the software. So he will not be in a position to test it again, he will not be having the code. So he can only say whether your particular software is working fine or not, and that is the reason black box testing is also called as behavioral testing, whereas white box testing is also called as glass box testing or structural testing. Then let us now consider a second similar case called automatic attendance monitoring system. The first case was also automatic attendance monitoring system, the second case was also automatic attendance monitoring. Now let us see the difference between the first case and the second case. In this case, automatic attendance monitoring, the university, in case 1 we were discussing about college. Over here in case 2 we discuss about a university. A university works between 8 am and 4 pm on weekdays for both students and staff members. Create an automatic attendance monitoring system. So this is our query, this is our case. Here we are supposed to create an automatic attendance monitoring system. Now we are not sure whether we are supposed to create this software for only for staff members or for both staff members as well students. So we do not have such a kind of clarity. One. Point number 2 is, if you are going to create this for both staff members and for students, then we do not know whether the timing of the housekeeping staff is also same with respect to the teaching staff members. So we say that in the given case, we say that the university works between 8 am and 4 pm every day. But do you mean to say that even the housekeeping staff comes in, punches in by 8 am and they leaves the office by 4 pm? Definitely that will not be case. So in that scenario, what is the time limit that the housekeeping staff has to be given? So we are not clear with our requirements. So, and the requirements may change. The customer, he may say that you create only for the staff members. Then after creating it for the staff members, for the teaching staff members, there is a possibility that he may say that you create it for students. There is a possibility that he will ask you to create it for the non-teaching staff members also. And in universities, many of the universities, they work on a flexible time basis. They work for 8 hours a day. It is not mandatory that they need to be available by 8 o'clock. They can even be going to the office by 8:15, provided they need to punch out only by 4:15. So there are few universities which work with flexible timings. So we do not have a clarity in requirements. So we do not have a full-fledged requirements as we had in case 1. My dear students, the case study may be similar, but the requirements differ. In case 1, we had a clear-cut, well understandable requirements, and that is the reason we went on to this waterfall model. Whereas in this particular case, we do not know whether we are going to create the software for students alone or for teaching staff alone or for non-teaching staff alone or for everyone, and we do not know the timing of their work schedule in a particular weekday. Now for this, which method is suitable? We will be going into agile life cycle model. So what are the steps that are involved in agile life cycle model? So as far as the agile life cycle model is concerned, we will be working with a methodology called as extreme programming, and we will be using a framework called as Scrum framework. A Scrum framework, what is a framework? A framework is a customizable, a framework is tailor made, wherein people can create the or can schedule their task. So it is customizable. So let us see the steps involved in this particular case by using a Scrum framework. My dear students, in the earlier sessions on agile development, you would have studied about Scrum framework, and you would have studied about sprints, you would have studied about product owner, product backlogs, and so on and so forth. So let us now correlate those sessions with our case study. So a Scrum framework will have a sprint. What is a sprint? Wherein a sprint is a minimum duration of 15 days to 4 weeks to 30 days, and you will be giving a minimal small feature as a delivery. We call the delivery as minimum marketable feature. So when you are going to give a minimum marketable feature, definitely you are supposed to have a sprint planning meeting. Before starting a sprint, we are supposed to have a sprint planning meeting. Then we are supposed to have a sprint backlog. What do you mean by backlog? That is, if a particular feature has not been complete and if it is still been pending, then that will get placed in the sprint backlog. Then next one is about the daily scrum. So as far as the scrum is concerned, as far as daily scrum meetings are concerned, what did you do yesterday, what you are going to do today, what are the hindrances or the obstacles that come up in the way wherein you cannot continue. So these are the 3 questions that will be asked in the daily scrum meeting. Then we will be having the results, and after completing anything, we need to review it. That is called as sprint review meeting. And then we will be having a release burn down charts. A release burn down charts shows the months completed and the amount of work done in that particular month. Then what are the advantages of using an agile life cycle model? The customer will be involved in each and every activity of the sprint or at the end of the sprint. The customers can change his mind frequently based on the need and based on his desires. So the functionality will improve on each stage. Minimum marketable feature will be delivered at the end of each sprint. Shorter sprints are better than longer sprint durations. Now my dear students, let us summarize these 2 case studies and let us see the project management techniques that we have discussed so far. So we have taken up a similar case with 2 different scenarios. So choosing the right process model plays a vital role in making the project a successful one. If a wrong model is chosen, it will result in failure and or delay in delivery. The project management techniques followed were discussed. The project management technique differs from case to case, as we have seen the similar cases, but 2 different methodologies, 2 different approaches were used. So these are some of the references for your future study. Thank you.